Welcome. I'm so proud to be here, and I'm also so honored to be here in front of such an esteemed audience, to be able to talk about what I love professionally, but also what I love emotionally, what makes my heart sing, which is to share to you how we can begin to diminish one of the greatest problems in our society today, violence against women. How we can try to move forward in preventing and solving this violence problem through how we care for our pregnant women. So let's move ahead and go to slide 2. And let me tell you why I'm a doctor that's speaking to you about this. Because childhood aggression, teenage delinquency, and adult violence are all being seen as public health issues. There's the fear that women have of becoming a victim, how that creates prolonged stress, and the physical problems that we all know come with prolonged stress, like cancer and heart disease, how 70% of doctor visits today in the US are for stress-related symptoms or conditions. And then there's the emotional problems that come from prolonged stress, like depression and anxiety. Slide 3. The impact of violence is felt all over. It affects the health and well-being of the public, especially where the public does not feel safe or secure. Slide 4. So what are the consequences of survivorship? Survivors often develop physical injuries from the assault, but also unrecognized post-traumatic stress disorder or other emotional injuries. Slide 5. And then there's the fear of becoming a victim, that impact of prolonged stress that I spoke about, being very significant with the health and well-being of the individual. Slide 6. So again, why a talk on violence by a physician? Because medical interventions actually impact levels of violence. It's so important to have proper medication use for those with mental illness, and nutritional and lifestyle interventions for those that have addiction disorders. Slide 7. And this relationship is bidirectional, meaning violence causes physical and emotional harm. Mental illness, addictions, and substance abuse or chronic pain cause violent behavior. Slide 8. And this new paradigm is what I'm here to talk to you about, because the most important way that we can change violence is by changing the prenatal experience. Slide 9. I will show you how the experience of violence or the fear of violence in the mother actually changes the prenatal experience for the fetus in such a way as to increase the likelihood of violent behavior later in life. Slide 10. We already know that child abuse, marital discord, and poor child rearing, that intimate partner violence and community violence and low socioeconomic status, that high social stress, negative attitudes about pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy, psychiatric disorders, substance abuse, alcohol use, all contribute to violence against women. Slide 11. But the medical factors you may not know about is that birth complications, obstetrical complications like elevated blood pressure, preeclampsia, premature birth, operative delivery, whether by cesarean section or forceps, also increase the likelihood that that child will be violent in childhood or adulthood. And that's due to some damage to the actual brain. We don't know exactly whether it's the prefrontal cortex or the hippocampus or the systems that affect neurotransmitters like dopamine. Cigarette smoking actually impacts violence, because when you have a mother that smokes, and if you combine that risk factor with things like teenage pregnancy or an unwanted pregnancy, the risk of that child becoming a persistent violent offender increases 19 times. Slide 12. So what is the first thing that makes a huge difference? My first action step is to recommend that good prenatal care be available for all women to prevent prenatal and obstetrical complications. Slide 13. The link of smoking to violence is there even when we control for things like demographics and parental and other perinatal risks. For example, mothers who smoke 20 cigarettes a day double the risk of producing a violent offender. And as the mother smokes more, the risk goes up even higher. And this is true for secondhand smoke exposure, even if the mother isn't smoking herself. Slide 14. And many mechanisms are proposed for this, whether it be decreased oxygen, more carbon monoxide, or nicotine, that changes the way the brain chemicals work. Slide 15. So what's the second thing that makes a difference? My second action step is to encourage smoking cessation during preconception and avoiding secondhand smoke during pregnancy. Slide 16. Let's discuss nutrition. Did you know that fetal brain development requires adequate nutrients, specifically protein, zinc, iron, and omega-3 fats like DHA? And that deficiencies of these nutrients actually lead to brain and behavior problems, especially violence. Slide 17. For instance, the male offspring of mothers that were severely malnourished during their first 2 trimesters of pregnancy had 2.5 times the rate of antisocial personality disorder when they were adults. Did you know that zinc deficiency is associated with violence and aggression, and low iron is linked to aggression? Slide 18. The precise mechanism on how nutritional deficiencies actually cause violence isn't completely understood, but the link itself is very clear. The mechanism has something to do with hormones and neurotransmitters, but that's less important than knowing that the link exists. So what makes a difference? For the third thing, my third action step, and this is slide 19, is to ensure adequate nutrition during pregnancy, including proper food choices and a quality multivitamin. Slide 20. More detail on nutrition. Proper food choices include as close to 10 servings of fruit and vegetables as possible each day, healthy protein choices, and avoiding unhealthy sugared snacks just to maintain calories. What are the healthy protein choices? Lean beef, chicken, soy, legumes, nuts, cold water fish, and eggs. And we want to avoid tuna, swordfish, and shellfish, which are often contaminated with mercury. A proper prenatal vitamin is important. It should have fish oil, which helps the fetal brain grow and also help prevent preterm birth, as well as choline, another vital nutrient for proper brain development, which you can get through eggs and liver if it's not in the prenatal vitamin that you have available. Slide 21. What the fetus is exposed to from the environment also matters. Prenatal blood lead concentrations are associated with higher rates of arrests for violent offenses. And this violent crime rate is consistent with preschool blood levels that lag 20 years into the future. So that when a lead level is elevated for a mother that's carrying her baby, for that pregnant mother, we see violence in her children at 20 years old, 20 years later. How important is it to make sure that lead is out of the environment of pregnant women? That's the best documented environmental cause. This is now slide 22. That is the best documented cause of prenatal violence when we look at environment. But there are other things that are now trending in the literature. Things like arsenic, bisphenol A, often called BPA, mercury, and PCBs, which is found in pesticides. Slide 23. So if we're looking at BPA, which is the common toxin in plastics, if we look at what happens to mice given BPA, their children are more isolated. They have fewer social interactions. They also make less of a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is such an important hormone because that is the hormone of human connection. And that also persisted 4 generations later. So that toxin taken during pregnancy was changing behavior in children, in males, 4 generations later. Slide 24. This is now about Bangladesh. 26% of the population, 35 million Bangladeshis, are drinking arsenic-contaminated water from tube wells. This is from the New York Times in 2002. Now, arsenic, we all know, can kill very quickly in high doses. But what you may not know is that in low doses, it requires longer to have its effect, up to 10 years. And it affects different people in different ways. So once again, the downstream effect of a toxin 2 to 10 years later. Slide 25. And it's not just happening in Bangladesh. Here we see how arsenic is in the United States in playgrounds with pressure-treated wood. This is a paper by the Environmental Working Group showing how arsenic is the #1 greatest threat to public health according to the CDC. Because a 12-foot section of pressure-treated wood has enough arsenic to kill 250 people. Right now, arsenic is outlawed and can't be added, but there's so many existing structures of pressure-treated wood that have arsenic. And where do we find it? Decks, railings, picnic tables, and unfortunately, playground sets, which is why you see here this graph showing the amount of arsenic a child gets while playing in a playground with pressure-treated wood is so much higher than the amount of arsenic that's allowed to be in a liter of water. Slide 29. So there is something we can do about this. Nutrition. Slide 30. Here we see a research paper, The Protective Effects of B Vitamins and Antioxidants on the Risk of Arsenic-Related Skin Lesions in Bangladesh. So here we see how in Bangladesh, where there was that high arsenic in the drinking water, that by giving nutrients, B vitamins, vitamins A, C, and E, it actually diminished the deleterious effect of the arsenic. Slide 31. Now for lead, mercury, and pesticides, PCBs, prenatal exposure causes a multitude of different effects, whether it be a reduction of IQ, behavior change, reduced attention span, increased vulnerability to frustration, and inability to deal with frustration. Slide 32. Now there haven't been a lot of studies on the behavioral changes that happen to lead, mercury, and PCBs like arsenic, so therefore it makes sense to say that the most effective way to prevent violence really is to prevent exposure to all of these contaminants. Slide 33. So what's the 4th thing that makes a difference? My 4th action step is to keep pregnant women away from proven prenatal toxins and probable prenatal toxins. And of course, making sure that you follow the good nutrition action steps as well, because I've shown you how that diminishes the negative effects of arsenic. Slide 34. Let's talk about stress to our pregnant moms. So prenatal stress, including exposure to toxins like cocaine, causes elevated salivary cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and changes the way school-age children react to stress. And this change in stress hormones in early adolescent children is directly related to antisocial and rule-breaking behavior. Slide 35. And we all know the many forms that prenatal stress can present themselves in, whether it's not enough social support, low socioeconomic status, unwanted pregnancy, and sexual, physical, or verbal abuse. And that prenatal stress also changes the hormonal environment in the mother's body, as well as signals that go to the fetus. And those changes lead to development of aggressive behavior in adults. So, slide 36. What makes a difference? The fifth action step is to make pregnant women feel safe and be safe, as well as to have access to learning stress reduction techniques like meditation and group support. Slide 37. I now want to share some thoughts by my colleague Dr. Verney on the birth of violence. The sensitive period after birth is when the baby and parents learn to know and to love each other. But if this period is interfered with by sickness or the absence of one of the participants, or if there's rejection of the newborn by the mother or the father, the child withdraws. Now that doesn't mean that every preemie who's sent to an intensive care unit will be scarred for life, but it does mean that you have to be aware of this particular issue. Slide 39. Studies of mothers who tried to get an abortion but were denied an abortion, whether for finances or maybe they were too far along, those studies tell us a lot about the effects of rejection on children, specifically prenatal rejection. Children that are rejected prenatally will show developmental, psychological, and social handicaps. So I ask you to ask yourself this question. How likely is a serial killer or violent rapist to be a wanted child that came from a normal, loving home? Slide 40. The brains of children exposed to violence or trauma must adapt, and they do that by sustaining a state of what we call hypervigilance. They're bathed in constant fear, and their brains and bodies shift into a constant state of fight or flight readiness. The qualities that protect them from abusive parents become liabilities later on. The adult brain of that once abused child has a distorted view of the world. They react to insults impulsively and often violently. And one of the most damaging assaults on the developing brain comes from parental neglect, which prevents development of the part of the brain that causes humans to feel connected to each other. Slide 41. We need more conscious parenting, which starts with preconception, not more police, more courts, or more jails. We need government policies that recognize the importance of prenatal life and the early postnatal period to the formation of personality, so that these policies can support pregnant women and their spouses. It was 50 years ago that a paper by Curtis first expressed the concern that abused or neglected children would become tomorrow's violent criminals and murderers. Are we going to wait another 50 years before we address this? Or are we going to do something now? That's why I'm here with you, sharing this information. Slide 42. Pregnant parents and other caring people must learn to appreciate the humanity of their unborn and their young children, and the value of communication. They have to communicate to them that they are loved and wanted. Because the future of the world may well depend on how successful we are at sending a very simple but vital message. As you do unto your own children, so they will do unto the world. So what makes a difference? What's the sixth action step? Avoid unintended and unwanted pregnancies, so that as you do unto your own children, so they will do unto the world. So these are my 6 action steps that I'm repeating. 1. Access to quality prenatal care for all. 2. Encourage smoking cessation and avoidance of secondhand smoke. 3. Ensure quality nutrition and supplementation. 4. Keep pregnant women away from proven human prenatal toxins. Slide 45. 5. Make pregnant women feel and be safe, as well as have access to stress reduction techniques. 6. Avoid unintended and unwanted pregnancies, so that as you do unto your own children, so they will do unto the world. Slide 46. These are resources, things that you can actually use to implement my recommendations. My book, The Whole Pregnancy Handbook, which goes into detail the nutritional as well as psychosocial interventions. The book Safe in the Arms of Love, which comes with a CD of music as well as the lyrics of songs and words that can enhance bonding and relax the baby in utero and after it's born. Slide 47. My final thoughts. Birth is a spiritual adventure with a physical outcome. In giving birth to a child, you are also giving birth to yourself. By acknowledging your fears and honoring the spirit that connects you, your baby, and all of nature, you can help your baby come into this world feeling loved and safe. 48. If you spend time thinking about and loving your baby with a quiet mind and an open heart, you will deepen your already powerful spiritual connection, which will lead to healthier, happier, more peaceful moms, babies, and families. I believe, deep in my soul, that this is the important next step in helping us achieve what we so desperately need, a world that honors and respects what unites rather than divides us all. Slide 49. Start conception with this. Advance. Slide 50. Because a kiss is really this. Advance. Notice the energetic connections. This is by Alex Gray. Slide 51. What it all comes down to is knowing this. Advance. Advance. And making everyone believe it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my heart song and let you know that we can make a difference. Thank you.